So, where are we now? Today, I'm sorry to say, we have little more than a covert system of slavery, which not only motivates people and groups to directly exploit for their preservation and expansion, the very construct of social operation, government and law, has evolved to preserve the integrity of the established elitist power structure and values as well. I call this structural classism, which is derived from an old phrase used in the 1960s by an activist named Stokely Carmichael called institutional racism. Structural classism really is a racist institution, as I'll describe. Only this time, the oppression is based on monetary social status, not the color of your skin. Some quick examples of this are debt and interest, capital gains, pay scales, and credit rankings. Really quickly, the debt and interest system is the most powerful driver of structural classism, for money is made out of debt and interest is charged as a fee and that interest doesn't exist in the money supply outright. And since the lower middle classes are the ones who need to take interest-bearing loans to afford cars, homes, and education, the vast majority of people are put into positions of imposed scarcity, with the pressures of debt constantly reaffirming their class status and hence lack of social mobility. Not to mention that the interest charged for those loans are then often paid to the upper class, who might invest their free cash into CDs or the like in a financial institution, making money off the interest while the poor pay it. You don't get much more structurally biased than that. Capital gains, which is the profit generated from the investment in the stock market, is likely, in fact, the key source of income disparity in the West, hence class permanence. The top 1/10, 0.1%, 1/10 of a percent earns 50% of all capital gains today. And according to Forbes, capital gains make up 60% of the income made by those in the Forbes 400. That's enormous. The top 400 richest people in America make 60% of their money through the capital gains that they get from the stock market. That's ridiculous. In other words, the art of turning money into more money, the stock market, this rich man's game that's been invented by them for their own purposes, really is the most massive driver of inequity and class division, and it's built into the design. The stock market should have been shut down a long time ago. And pay scales. Pay scales via the corporate pyramid are also astounding and irrational. Top CEOs in the financial service sector now take home hundreds of millions of dollars a year still. If you were to compare the shift in pay scales as you examine the corporate ladder, the multiplier is truly astounding and baseless as far as merit. A study done by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found that Canada's top CEOs make an average worker's yearly salary in 3 hours. It's even worse in America, naturally. And the final issue I'll address on this regarding structural classism has to do with the credit system, which is pretty much universal. Those in the lower and middle classes are always under the benchmark, if you will, for the cost of survival in terms of their available cash. Homes, education, cars, no one has the type of money to pay outright for this in those lower classes. So credit must be used. And once any error of judgment emerges, or money is not available for a bill that's due, the possibility of affecting one's credit negatively becomes more and more probable. Very common with hospital bills, for example, which is a leading cause of bankruptcy in America. And once it's tarnished, it becomes a self-feeding feedback loop, if you will. And I've seen this with numerous friends of mine, where once they get a little bit inhibited, they can't get above water, and it's one big massive spiral, and they end up at the bottom of their credit with very, very little options in the way they conduct their financial life. It's structurally classed. I could provide many more examples of this, but I think you get the point. The structure of this system benefits the ownership, investment, governance class, continually securing the financial well-being of the wealthy elite while systematically inhibiting the well-being of the lower and middle classes to keep them in their place, if you will. And back to my main point, what did you all expect? The structurally induced psychology inherent to a system based on competition, where some win and some lose, logically leads to levels of protection that transcend the market itself and move into affecting the regulation or governance of society as a whole as a form of market strategy. and preservation. And why not? After all, it's the free market, right? Who says lines have to be drawn? If I believe in competition and a philosophy that some will win, some will lose, I seek my own best interest, that's the game, then I would have personally no problem working to alter the very structure of society to support and reinforce my security as the way I choose to operate. It's a natural progression, so the things we see as far as government collusion, we shouldn't be surprised whatsoever. And in conclusion of this section, as an aside, I would like to add that if I was indeed a wealthy elitist, groomed into a value system, that I must be better than everyone else in the world to justify the fruits of what I've been given, for whatever reason, the great wealth and privilege that you see. I would like nothing more than the impecunious masses to think that the free market was the only way for their liberty and freedom. It's a perfect structural scam for the entire economic system. By its very core, philosophy inherently supports the higher classes and condemns the lower.